All right. All right. Well, let's let everybody trickle in here. Hope everybody's having a great evening today. First and foremost, my name is Adam. Just want to thank you guys for being here tonight. I know your time is really valuable, so we really appreciate you spending part of your evening tonight with us. And man, it's hard to believe. I was just thinking about this earlier today, how we're already 8 weeks into this year, only now a few more days until March, which sounds crazy. And for many buyers right now, this uncertainty still hasn't gone away, which we were kind of hoping it would have by now. Affordability is still a challenge. Interest rates have been really stubborn, although we do have some really exciting stuff that my co-host Ben will share here a little bit later on that, some good news, as well as though just a lot of uncertainty, as I mentioned. So if you've been wondering, should I wait? Am I too early? Maybe I'm too late, or, am I even, should I be buying a home right now? Am I making a mistake? Well, if you guys have questions like that going into your head, you're not alone. And those are the exact conversations that we're having with buyers every single day. So the good news, more than anything we're going to get through here tonight, is that there's still a lot of opportunity out there, and a lot of buyers that we're working with are still winning in this 2026 Denver market. So it's not by guessing, it's not by these headlines that are scaring a lot of people away. It's really about just understanding this process and how it works, and then building a smart plan around your specific situation. So that's exactly why we're here tonight. And again, I'm excited to be with one of the top mortgage professionals in the entire country, Ben Adams, also one of my closest friends. He's really deep in the numbers every single day. Interest rates, lending strategies, affordability options. He's going to break all of that down, bring a lot of clarity tonight to what actually matters when deciding if, when, and how to buy in the Denver market this year. So I'll introduce him properly here in a second, but really quick, one quick housekeeping item before we do dive in tonight. We're hosting this through StreamYard. It's just this online platform that I use. And you'll see on the right-hand side of the screen, there's a chat section. It'll either say chat or it might say private message. The big thing here is just feel free to use that as much as you can. I'm going to be delivering a lot of information tonight along with Ben through a fire hose, so to speak. And if you guys have questions where we're going through this, feel free to type anything into the chat. If we aren't able to answer it right then and there, hopefully we can. If we're right in that specific topic at that time, we'll talk about it then. Otherwise, we'll just make sure that the first questions we answer in our live Q&A at the end will be whatever you guys submit to us throughout tonight. So it's going to be about 45 to 50 minutes of content, and then hopefully have some great questions to answer for you guys. And as I said, you guys, we're going to go through all of this pretty quickly tonight. So if you have any questions, don't forget to write those down. And more than anything else, just be open to new ideas, and hopefully we'll share a few things that you guys can implement into your lives after today. With that being said, I'm going to bring Ben onto the screen. All right. Ben, what's going on? Can you hear us?
Yes, I can.
All right. How you doing, man?
Oh, I'm doing great. How's your Wednesday night going?
It's going good, man. Another beautiful day here in Denver. For anybody that's on tonight that might be out of state, we had some crazy weather the last couple of days. It was in the 70s, believe it or not. So very, very unusual. I actually saw Ben. I think I saw you posted something on Facebook about this earlier today, how I think it's the year-to-date snowfall here in Denver is actually less than New York City, which is nuts.
Yeah, that stat that I shared was less than New York City in one day. They had a really heavy day of snowfall a couple of days ago, and it's more than we've gotten here in Denver the entire season so far. So very, very unusual for this time of year.
That's crazy, man. Well, guys, really excited to have Ben on with me as always. And just while I am talking to him and getting ready for you guys to learn a bunch of great stuff from him, give you guys a quick little a brag about him for a second. So on a side note, Ben and I have known each other for, I think, almost 30 years at this point. We actually met each other in high school, Wheat Ridge High School. If you guys are in Denver, we went to high school kind of on the western side of town in Wheat Ridge. He's got over 22 years of industry experience, personally funded over $300 million in home loans, definitely a ton of families served, over 700. I bet that number is even higher by now. And what I love, probably this last one more than anything, he's an active real estate investor, you guys. He actually has well over 20 units across multiple states. He actually, does what he's talking about, and makes it also real. You realize after just learning Ben's story how achievable it is for any of us. So again, Ben, really excited to have you on tonight, and just really appreciate all of the value you're going to be bringing tonight. So thanks, man.
Oh, that's my pleasure, and thank you for having me on. And the reason I like to share my story is because I earlier in my career, I was once a first-time homebuyer, and I didn't know what the correct strategy was, and I didn't know what was the right move. And I got the opportunity to experience all those different emotions. So I want to be able to share and be a resource to others in the way that other folks were a resource to me.
Love that, man. That's awesome.
Now, let me introduce you, Adam. So why listen to Adam? Well, Adam is a 42-year Colorado Denver native. He recently ranked 5th out of 344 Denver agents in sales volume at eXp Realty. He's also a certified real estate negotiation expert, the host of Living in Denver YouTube channel, and also the co-host of the Pursuit of Progress. So Adam, thank you for putting this together. Really excited to see what you have and what we're going to be going over tonight.
Yeah, guys. So I'm going to just, again, try and get through this just as quickly as possible while still making, the point on all these different things we're excited to share with you. So the first thing I want to start with, though, is just understanding a lot of different people right now have different, things that are really their biggest challenge. So these are 4 that we've really just been seeing the most common recently, whether it be saving for a down payment, just understanding the market, as far as interest rates, just the buyer demand, seller demand. What does it mean to be in a buyer's market versus a seller's market? And then also a lot of people just don't really understand maybe they've bought or sold a house or two, but they don't understand how to really win and get a great deal on a home, or when selling a home to really get some great terms when selling that home. So just writing competitive offers is a big one. We're going to go through a lot of really unique, specific tips on that here in a bit. And then also just finding the right home. I know that there might be a few people on tonight from out of state. And in that case, moving to a different place like Denver might feel a little overwhelming. So that's another common challenge we're hearing. We heard this a lot last year, and we're already starting to hear it again in 2026. But the reason why we put these on is just to provide you guys with as much educational value as possible to make sure you're in that right place whenever that time comes. We're not selling anything. We're just really trying to give you guys just the basics and help you guys understand, since this is such a unique time right now here in the Denver market. And a few different just quick slides I put together for why a lot of people are really feeling stuck and just kind of a little bit of a loss. Like they feel like it's this unattainable or unachievable. It's because a lot of buyers right now, they're playing defense and they're paying the price. The traditional buyer, they're waiting until that last minute to get serious. They're reacting emotionally, maybe even getting to the point where they're really kind of conceding to the seller's terms, overpaying, missing some of that buyer leverage that they still have right now, and just leaving money on the table. However, hopefully after tonight, you guys will be a little bit more of a strategic buyer. And that means you're preparing early. You're really understanding how the game works, using timing, negotiation, how to structure an offer appropriately to really make it the winning offer, and as identifying some of these hidden opportunities that most people completely overlook. So this difference is pretty massive. You're going to avoid overpaying by tens of thousands of dollars in a lot of cases, avoiding any costly inspection mistakes. We're going to go through some of that here in a bit as well, and just missing some of these really opportune times to negotiate. So hopefully after tonight, as well as any just kind of education you're continuing to do afterwards, just making sure that you really are able to buy with confidence, clarity, and full control. Denver buyers who use this strategy are definitely paying less. They're negotiating better deals, and just keeping more money in their pocket, which is obviously what everybody wants. So really excited to go over all this with you guys. And we start off just with understanding the local market. And I'm going to have Ben turn the mic over to Ben here and just get his take on a few things. But really what I want to get Ben's take on most importantly is just sharing this really exciting news that just in this past few days, we've finally been seeing interest rates back in the sub 6, so 5% range. I know I sounds funny saying that because it's 5.99%, but hey, it's still under 6%. So Ben, just while we kind of get going on some of these local market stats, I'd love just to get your feedback on the interest rate right now. If you think it's going to continue to go down over the next few weeks, few months, just kind of like what your outlook is, just kind of like a quick 1 or 2 minutes for Denver market here in 2026.
Yeah, certainly. Interest rates are in a great spot. They're the lowest they've been in over 3 years. The average 30-year fix, as you mentioned, is 5.99%. But what is great about that is that there are a lot of other programs and programs that we have at North Point, for example, where if you are qualified for some of these programs as a first-time home buyer, or if it's an affordable housing type loan, or even down payment assistance. And sometimes you can help tackle those affordability issues by being able to get an interest rate that's even lower, being able to help get some of your down payment subsidized through some of our partners. We have over 15 to 20 first-time home buyer minimum down payment, reduced down payment, and down payment assistance loans. So from that perspective, that's very, very exciting. What I have gotten a lot over the last year and a half is just affordability concerns. Everyone is nervous. They're frustrated with affordability. Property values are higher, especially in markets like Denver. And then when you consider where property taxes are at, homeowners insurance, buyers have been a little hesitant at times. But right now, there was a stat that came out yesterday that there are now over 600,000 more sellers in the United States than buyers. And that's so exciting because buyers finally, after 15 years, they have more leverage. It means they can negotiate some of these things. They can ask the seller for sales price reductions, or to contribute towards their closing cost, or use a seller concession to buy down the interest rate, either a permanent rate buy down or something like a temporary interest rate buy down. So it's exciting from that perspective. Also, when you factor in that rates are at a 3-year low, it's tough to say where things are headed. I can say though, right now, I'm excited. It's a great time of year. We're going into that really busy season, end of February into March. And so I'm very optimistic for 2026.
Love that, man. You're always an optimistic guy. And I think they're also very practical and real. So I'm excited just to kind of have you share a few of your perspectives here in a bit more. So, as I said, guys, when we first got started tonight, just so crazy with the weather this year in Denver, in the 70s the last few days. And I think just over the past, really the 8 weeks since we've started this new year, the weather's been pretty much warmer and a lot nicer than expected. And I think that is kicking off the spring rush, or that season that tends to be quite busier for real estate. We're feeling like that's starting to kind of have hints of, maybe happening a bit earlier than normal. So I know I'm starting to see that as far as new listings hitting the market, just more people kind of coming out of the woodwork, asking me about, perspective on things and even working with me. So I feel like there is a lot of shifting that's going to be happening here in the very near future. Listing prices, as I just shared on that slide while Ben was talking, is down a little bit, about 1.4% from last year. So that's great to see if you are a buyer, to be able to get homes for a little bit cheaper still, as well as the time that homes are sitting on the market. We're sitting still right around 50 to 55 days. So with that means that you're able to, as a buyer, not be rushed quite as much as you were maybe 4 or 5 years ago. You're able to, really do your due diligence on a home, make sure it's the right fit, as well as use that to your ability just to leverage this offer that you're maybe going to submit on that home a little bit more. If they're sitting on the market for 2 months, that might mean that they're, a little bit more motivated to sell, and maybe we'll take a reduced price. So again, a lot of really good news for buyers right now. This is definitely, though, going to be a short window of opportunity, in my opinion. This is my personal opinion, but because of these other moving parts, such as the interest rates getting back down below 6%, as that continues to get down a bit lower, I think that's going to be a lot more of a news story. We're going to hear this more and more and more, and that's going to start getting more people kind of deciding that, maybe this is finally that time to get off the sidelines after they maybe been sitting for the last few years, just feeling like they just need to hold out and kind of weather the storm. Summing this all up, you guys, I just think that if done properly, having that right background of information, making sure you're making a smart decision, as long as you're doing these things and really leveraging this opportunity as a buyer, I think 2026 can be a great opportunity. So just kind of more optimism about what to expect as we get through this year.
Yeah, and that's why we're doing this tonight, right? Because we want to help people come to that conclusion. We want them to be able to make an informed financial decision based off of their individual financial profile. What is in their best interest? There's a lot of misconceptions at times out there when it comes to home buying and the pre-approval process. And that just reminds me, if there's any questions that you have, or if there's anything that you want to talk about, Adam is going to share a link a little bit later where you're going to have the ability to schedule a call with us. There's not any cost involved. We have the ability to schedule a 15 or 30-minute call. So if you have any questions, you want to talk through anything specifically, please schedule that and take advantage of it.
Yeah, definitely. So just kind of close this out before moving on to some more practical knowledge that we're going to share with you guys. I just love this kind of three punch here. Timing doesn't beat strategy. Confidence definitely always beats guesswork, and preparation saves buyers real money. So if that right home does pop up, let's just say that you are an aspiring home buyer this year. When that home does pop up, maybe that perfect home, are you going to be in that position that day or that week to be able to hopefully capitalize on that and
Yeah.
have that home become yours if that's what your goal is? And you're not going to be able to do that confidently unless you really do some of this homework ahead of time and just be in that position of confidence.
When you talk to a lender and you get formally pre-approved, it doesn't obligate you to move forward with a purchase or have to complete a loan. Again, you want to put a plan together. You want to have a vision for yourself and your family, and you want to know what your options are. The best way to do that is to contact a lender, get pre-approved, and then start the conversation. So when you do find the home, you're ready, whether it's a week from now, a month from now, or 6 months from now.
Mm-hmm. And just one quick little side note, you guys, I'm going to be sharing this with you after tonight. It's just over 2 hours of video. I've basically created video modules for all 5 of the sections that we're going to chat through tonight with you guys on this webinar. So again, since it's a fire hose of information tonight, if you have certain areas that maybe you're feeling a little bit less confident in, that you want to go back and just really get a better, thorough understanding of, feel free to hop into these videos because I break it down in a lot smaller tidbits and just easier to maybe digest if you want something specific answered. So Ben, let's just dive into this. So we have an acronym for this because we've learned both personally, both myself and Ben, that a lot of times it's easier to remember things and just comprehend information if you have an acronym. So we put together the CLOSE method. So this is just the 5 steps of a homebuyer journey. And Ben, I'm going to let you get started just with the first one, which is C, which is just connecting with the lender. This is one of the very first things that you need to be doing, even if it's just maybe a possibility of buying a home this year.
Yeah, that's right. And connecting with a lender is so important, again, because you want to see what your options are. There's a lot of misconceptions when it comes to getting pre-approved and mortgage. There's a lot of home buyers out there that think they need 20% down, or they think they need to be employed at their job for at least 2 years. And most of the time, the information is wrong. So at places, the bank that I work at is called North Point Bank, and we offer every type of loan out there: VA, FHA, USDA, conventional, Fannie, Freddie. We also do portfolio loans. The application process is always going to be a 2-step process. The first step is going to be completing the online application. That usually takes about 15 minutes. And then the lender at that point will also do a credit pull. Most lenders will have the ability to do either a hard or a soft pull. So depending on your timing, if you're looking to purchase something within the next 3 months, a hard pull is more appropriate. If you're kind of just putting your toe in the water and you're wanting to see what you qualify for or what options could look like, then a soft pull may be more appropriate. So the first step is completing the application and doing that initial credit pull. And then your lender is going to request all of your financials. They're going to ask you to send in your tax returns, if you're self-employed, your W-2s for the last 2 years, your 2 most recent pay stubs, bank statements to verify the source of funds, a copy of your ID, and they're going to do some things behind the scenes. They're going to get the employment verified and double check some of the other things on the credit report. After all of that has happened, at that point, the lender will let you know what you're qualified for. They'll be able to identify what your purchasing power is, so you know what you can afford. And then they'll also be able to tell you what programs you may qualify for. Any first-time homebuyer programs, reduced down payment assistance. There are programs out there right now that are based off of the area median income. And because Denver is a bigger city, our area median income is higher. And so what that means is that a lot of these programs have higher income limits where you can qualify for some type of incentive. Sometimes it may be a reduction in the interest rate. It could be a reduction in the mortgage insurance, or it could be some of those other factors: the minimum down payment, the reduced down payment, or the down payment assistance. And so getting pre-approved, though, this is what I was saying earlier, is it doesn't obligate you. There's not any cost involved, and it doesn't mean that you have to do anything. But what you are doing is you're educating yourself. You know what your options are. And then when you do find that home, you're going to be ready. One of the biggest mistakes that I see buyers make is they don't get pre-approved in advance. They wait to go find the home, and then all of a sudden they want to get an offer in, but because they never got pre-approved, now they're scrambling. It can get very, very stressful. These are some things. Thank you for going to the next screen, Adam. These are some things that when you apply for a mortgage, these are some of the things that you don't want to do. So you don't want to change bank accounts. You don't want to start moving money back and forth between your bank accounts. You also don't want to have your credit pulled. You don't want to apply for any new loans. Your lender will get an email or a text alert if you have your credit pulled. The credit bureaus will notify the bank, and if there is any new debt, that has to be taken into consideration. You also don't want to co-sign for a loan for anyone, a friend or a family member. I always say this, and I learned this lesson myself the hard way. If someone's asking you to co-sign, it's one of two reasons. Reason number one is they literally cannot afford the loan. They don't have the means to pay the loan back. The second reason is they have a documented pattern of behavior of not paying their bills on time. And so that is why someone needs a cosigner. And when you phrase it like that, why would I want to go help someone who literally can't repay the loan or has a history of not paying the loan on time? So don't ever cosign. I did it. I've done it. I get it. But it is always a mistake. And here's the thing about cosign debt. If you go sign for a family member or a friend, an auto loan, all of a sudden that's your debt. You might be the cosigner, but you're legally responsible. It's going to show up on your credit, and that may have to be factored into your debt to income ratio, which could impede your ability to get pre-approved. Last couple things, you don't want to make any large purchases. If you have any questions about large purchases or large withdrawals, make sure that you have that conversation with your lender before you do anything. And then lastly, you don't want to make any cash deposits into your checking or savings account. Everything in the mortgage world has to be sourced. You're not allowed or able just to go put large sums of cash into your checking account. The biggest thing is communication. If you have questions, if you have concerns, if you don't know what to do, remember your loan officer, your lender is going to be an advocate for you and also a buffer between you and the underwriter. So have those conversations and share those concerns and those thoughts when they come up.
That was very well said. Thanks, Ben. So the importance of your credit score, I'm going to share with you guys now something that I actually learned from Ben a few years back, but something that has really been top of mind, and I like to share it with anybody that I talk to that's an aspiring homeowner when it comes to improving your credit score and just how the credit score is actually compiled. Like, how does that even, get graded for each person? What goes into it? What maybe can drastically affect it positively or negatively? So Ben, I'd love just to have you give us a quick little breakdown of this, specifically with the credit utilization score, and just sharing how there's both the local and the global, and just maybe a tip for how they can really make sure that they're doing whatever they can now just to get that in the best place possible.
Yeah, and this is so important because there is a lack of information and a lack of education when it comes to really everything in the personal finance world, but especially credit and credit scores. Most people mistakenly think that their credit score is calculated off of if they're making their payments on time. Now, payment history, don't get me wrong, that is important. There's really 5 important factors when it comes to credit scoring, and that's one of them. But this is the one that we're going to talk about right now that gets overlooked constantly. It's called credit utilization. So let me give you an example. What credit utilization is it only applies to revolving accounts. So credit cards, in-store charge cards. It would also apply to lines of credit, an unsecured personal line of credit, perhaps a home equity line of credit. A lot of times these accounts are going to have some type of limit. So let's say that the limit on a credit card is $10,000. Most people think that they can borrow against that, and that's perfectly fine. Now, they have the ability to do that. So if your credit card limit is $10,000, you have the ability to go spend $10,000, but that's going to have an adverse impact. It's going to negatively impact your credit utilization. So your credit utilization is what your balance is compared to the limit. So if your limit is $10,000 and your balance is $6,000, that would put your credit utilization at 60%. If your credit limit is $10,000 and your balance is $2,000, that would put your credit utilization at 20%. Now, in the world of the credit bureaus and their scoring models, you always want to keep that credit utilization score under 30%. If you go over that, again, you're allowed to do that. You're capable of doing that. You have the means to do that, but that is when it's going to start to impact your score. So each individual card is going to have a different limit. So if the limit is $15,000 on one, you want to make sure that you're keeping that under 30%. If it's $10,000 on another, same thing. You're keeping it under 30%. So the local credit utilization is always the individual account or the individual card. The global credit utilization is all of the revolving accounts combined. And so you want to make sure that you're keeping the local credit utilization or each card under 30%, but then also the combined accounts. Now, people make this mistake when they have maybe they have 3 or 4 credit cards, but they use one credit card for the majority of their purchases. And if that limit isn't high enough, it's possible that their global credit utilization could be under 30%, but then their individual local credit utilization on that specific card could be higher. So this is something that you want to be aware of. So you're putting yourself in the very best position possible to, number one, be educated, but then to also allow for the most favorable financing terms, not just with mortgage, but with everything.
Very well said. I actually recently, just on a quick side note, you guys, I signed up for this Rocket Money. I don't know. It's basically just something to help you like track all of your recurring monthly memberships, but it also has this thing where it syncs all of your different credit cards. If you type each of them into this account, it's free. And then I just noticed actually this past week how you can scroll down and it'll show you all of your accounts, the balance, what credit utilization you have for each of the local or individual cards, as well as that global utilization score. So they actually broke it down exactly how you're speaking on right now. And it was just cool to actually see that on this platform. So that's a good one, you guys, if you're just curious about just how to kind of track this and not have it become this overwhelming, difficult thing to manage. Check out Rocket Mortgage. I think it's Rocket Money is the app that I'm referring to. All right, Ben, well, thanks, buddy. Now let's chat about the second part of the close method, which again is the second one, which is going to be the looking or location of the house. So to find the right home for you, there's a lot more that can really go into this to make sure you guys are in that best position possible when the time comes. And a lot of this is just kind of fun activities and just little homework you can do at the dinner table with whoever you're going to be potentially living with in the new home. So just a little exercise for you guys if you haven't done this yet. Whoever you're going to be living in the new home with, just, find a night that you're going to just all be at dinner together, or, sometime where you can just be in one place for about an hour and just share around the table everybody's what we like to call priorities, specifically your non-negotiables. And you can break this out in a few different ways. But what I mean by this is just really understanding everybody that's going to be living in that home. What are their must-haves? What are their nice to haves, and what are any potential deal breakers? So especially for you guys that are maybe on tonight from out of state, from out of Colorado, we can talk through a couple specifics on that for that scenario. A must have would, for example, be you've got 2 kids. They're both getting into their teenage years. So you need a minimum of a 3-bedroom house, one for each of the 2 kids and one for yourself. That would be an example of a must have. A nice to have is really one that happens so often with out-of-staters that are moving to Denver. An example of this would be if you buy a home that has a 2-car garage and you and your partner each have a car. So 2-car garage, perfect. Well, come out to Colorado, a lot of fun activities to do, skiing, mountain biking, kayaking, hiking, whatever it may be. A lot of this stuff, unfortunately, does require equipment, gear, just stuff. And that stuff needs to go somewhere. And it often goes in the garage. So all of a sudden that 2-car garage with 2 cars is not even possible anymore. So now one of you guys, maybe you have your car out on the street, and then now it's a 1-car garage with a bunch of stuff in it. So a nice to have, a long-winded way of just explaining how a nice to have could be needing a 3-car garage, even though you really only need a 2-car garage. So that'd be an example of that. And then a deal breaker, let's just say, for example, you already do live here in Colorado and in Denver, and you have a younger kiddo, and maybe they already are in a specific school district, and they want to stay in that school district just so they're able to kind of, get older with their current group of friends. A deal breaker might be, we have to be in the Jefferson County School District or the Cherry Creek, we have to be in a specific school. That'd be an example of a deal breaker. So really important just to kind of have understanding and clarity behind this, because the worst thing that can happen is not having this figured out, going out, looking at homes and having maybe one that just is amazing. You fall in love with it, become emotionally attached to it, but it just doesn't work. It doesn't have some of your must-haves, or maybe a lot of the nice-to-haves, nowhere close to having those. If we really identify this stuff early on in our search, there's a lot higher potential chance that we're going to find stuff that actually fits your goals and your needs, and it'll be a lot better fit for you guys. So last thing before I move on and get Ben's take on this, another really good, just kind of fun way to think about this, you guys, is just this basically pick 2 out of 3 concepts. So pretty much, majority of the time when we have buyers that come out maybe from out of state, meet me, we go out and look at homes. Usually two out of these three are achievable, sometimes all three, but majority of the time it's really two. And then that third one, you might have to sacrifice a bit on. So the three of these that we're talking about is price, location, and condition. So price, pretty self-explanatory. You want to find a home that's between $450,000 and $500,000. That's price. The location, you want to be maybe in a certain school district, or maybe you really want to have a home that's in, let's just say, the Sloan Lake area, which is a really fun area that I used to live in, really close to downtown Denver, but a little bit more of a suburb feel. Just an awesome place. So that'd be an example of location. Condition is referring to the condition of the home. So is it a brand new home? Is it a new build? Or maybe is it a home that has a lot of character to it? Is it a home that has a lot of upkeep and a big yard? Is it a home that maybe is a little bit more of a fixer-upper? That's condition. So 2 out of 3 are usually achievable. So we'll use Sloan Lake again as an example here. Sloan Lake is very, very popular, and it's very, very expensive. Over the last 15 or 20 years, since Ben and I both graduated high school, over 20 years at this point, but we've really seen this area completely transform. So somebody that comes to me and says, I really want to be in Sloan Lake, well, we've got the location identified. What's the price point you're looking to spend? Oh, I'd like to spend between maybe right around $600,000. Okay, that's great. Well, to do that in that area at that price point, we're probably going to have to sacrifice a bit on the condition of the home. It might need to be a bit of an older style home that has a little bit of, value add potential, things that you can maybe start to work on yourself just to save money and maybe do over time to make it a little bit closer to what you ideally want. So the condition is the example there that would be sacrificed a bit. We'll do one more and then we'll move on. Let's just say that you don't really care about location, but your price point is $600,000 and you really, really want to have it be a brand new home, a new build. Well, if those are the two that we know for sure, location, we actually have quite a few options now that we can kind of direct ourselves to, and along with those non-negotiables, start to really filter down and dial in exactly what we're looking for. And the homes that we actually have on our list now are much more relevant and hopefully going to, fit what ideally you want in a home. Ben, I'll let you get your take on this here in a second. Really quick, guys. Also, at the end of this, I'm going to email you a bunch of other free stuff, including really helpful. It's an interactive map. It's on our website, adamsoulsdenver.com, and you have over 20 of all the main parts of Denver that if you're not that familiar yet with Denver, some of the out-of-staters on tonight, go on there and just click through and you can just really get a little bit better feel for some of the different areas, demographics, types of homes, just all that good stuff. Ben, let's get your take on that before we move on to, I think it's probably both of ours favorite kind of part of this presentation, of this talk tonight. Oh, you're on mute, Ben. You're on mute, Ben.
I'm sorry about that, everyone. Just to echo your thoughts there on the price, condition, location. I always love sharing my story. When I bought my first home, it was in Phoenix, Arizona. Yes, I am a Denver native, but I did live in Phoenix for about 10 years. When I bought my first home in Phoenix, I was much younger. This is about 16 years ago, just starting a family. And I wanted something that was newer, and I wanted something that was affordable. And so when I purchased that, I had to go to an area or a location that wasn't the best. And I knew that at the time, but I was okay with that because I knew how important it was for me to get into the game of real estate. I knew that this wasn't going to be my forever home. And that's one thing that I think sometimes first-time homebuyers struggle with, is they want that first home to be the forever home. And there is a difference there. The reason I decided to do that is because I knew that I was going to start building equity. I was going to start to allow the property to appreciate, go up in value, and I would also be paying the loan off. So I was able to sell that property 5 years later. I walked away with proceeds from that sale that then helped me purchase the property that I'm currently in here in Denver. So had I not bought that first home, I would not have had the opportunity or the home that I'm in right now. So it's just something to think about. Where are you at with your home journey? And remember, your first home doesn't have to be your forever home.
Mm-hmm. Very well said. All right, guys. So now we're going to move on to the third one. So we got close, CL. Now we're at the O, which is the offer. And as I alluded to a second ago, I like Ben and I both, we really, really enjoy this topic because it's something that, as industry professionals that we both are, we see it done wrong so often. And it's such a huge opportunity, especially for first-time home buyers as well as seasoned home buyers. There's such a huge amount of opportunity to really craft these winning offers. And once it does become a little bit more competitive again for the home buyers, again, right now it's a little bit more of a buyer-friendly time, but it's going to change at some point. And when it does, this is stuff that we're talking about right now is going to be so much even more important. So crafting a winning offer, the whole point of what we're talking about with this is understanding that this is a two-way street. This is, what I mean by that is it's not just about the buyer, which let's just say you guys are the buyer. It's not just about you. It's also about the other side of the transaction, the seller. And what I mean by this is to have it be a win-win scenario. And by having it be a win-win scenario, oftentimes when things do kind of maybe go sideways, and they often do, nothing crazy, but oftentimes once you're under contract, things can come up. When you've established this really positive win-win relationship with the other side of the transaction from day one, from the very beginning, you're able to get through a lot of this stuff. And it's a lot easier to maybe, get the seller to concede and maybe give a little bit of a credit because the hot water heater is a little bit older. Just stuff like that. Just making the point that it's really important not just to get the offer accepted, but also after that point, up until the home actually sells. We call that the contract to close phase of this journey. And that part is so important to have this winning offer really structured in a way that everybody feels good about it and it's a win-win. So there's a few ways that you can do this. And Ben, I'll let you first just share about just picking up the phone, because I know that's something you're really passionate about.
Yeah, that's one thing that I'm very passionate about. And I think that you do a phenomenal job with that, where you are not afraid. If you're working with a buyer and you have a buyer that's interested in writing an offer, you're not afraid to pick up the phone, call the listing agent, and get as much information as you can. A lot of buyers agents that I've worked with mistakenly assume that price and timing, how quick you can close, are everything. And it's just not the case. And when you make those calls, Adam, a lot of times you're shocked to find out what is the reason and what's the motivation behind the seller. Why are they selling? The listing agent will, they may share with you why they're selling. There could have been a death in the family. There could have been divorce. The kids are out of the house. They're downsizing. Maybe they're moving markets. They're moving out of state to be closer with family. Sometimes they just want to get the home sold so they can move on to the next chapter of their life. And other times when you've made those calls, you found out that there's a certain date that they want to close on. For whatever reason, they have other contingencies they're considering. And so you're shocked when you make those calls. But the reason that's important, it's kind of a discovery call, because when you write your offer, so when Adam writes his offers for buyers, he's able to consider some of those things that are important to the seller. Oh, you want to close on this date? You want this much amount in earnest money. Okay, we're going to do that. And we're going to present the offer in a way that we're making sure that we're at least being thoughtful of what the seller is looking to accomplish while still representing your buyer. When I was younger, I made the mistake of thinking that when you're going through real estate, to craft a winning offer meant, if I was going to win the offer, it meant that somebody else had to lose the offer. And that's just not the case. That's a false mindset. The best offers that are written are offers that are going to be a win-win for both the buyer and the seller. And Adam, you just do a phenomenal job with that.
Oh, thanks, buddy. One example I'd like to share with you guys on this. So Ben had, mentioned timing, a specific closing date as an example. There's ways to have, let's just say it's a competitive market and there's 3 people that are all individually interested in a house. So all 3 of these people submit offers. Maybe they all submit full price offers. So they're all the exact same price point. Well, what else can we do to make ours more valuable and enticing than the others? And one, I almost said the word trick. It's not a trick. It's it's a win-win for everybody involved. But one solution that I've used many times, and it's something that you rarely see, but is very valid and legitimate, is what's called a PCOA, or a post-closing occupancy agreement. So just as an example, this past year, 2025, I had a buyer client that we found this great house and found out that the sellers, they were selling it. We went under contract, I believe it was like early May, and they had a daughter that was graduating high school in a couple weeks. And they really wanted to stay in that house after graduation just for them to enjoy a few weeks with their daughter in the home that she grew up in, and have a few parties, all that stuff. And that was kind of a stressful part of them selling their home when they were, and just this extra thing that was going on that was just kind of a nuisance to them, a nuisance for them. So what they're able to do is accept our offer, which included a post-closing occupancy agreement. So what happens here is we have the closing date still structured and set at that earlier date. So maybe it was May 15th, I'll use as this example. But from that point forward, you're allowed to have them basically become a tenant. It's a post-closing occupancy agreement. So they're, living in the home, and you can do this for up to 60 days without having it become a whole different thing where they're now a tenant and you're the landlord. There's a way to do this where they are able to sell the home, get the proceeds of the home, hopefully maybe even need that to then use to buy their next home, but then allowing them a period of time to still stay in that home as a post-closing occupancy agreement. So this is just one thing that, you could do this completely for free, where you just say, you know what, we're going to give you 30 days. You don't have to pay anything other than maybe a security deposit. You can make it, very valid and valuable to them, or you could even just charge them a dollar amount. I've done that several times too. The benefit of that is, let's just say you do a $200 a night, they kind of have to pay. Well, that's a little bit of more motivation for them to hopefully, kind of maybe get out a little bit earlier than they thought they would, just to get you into the home as well. So that's just one example, though, of leverage that you can have as a buyer just by creatively structuring a win-win offer for everybody that's involved. Ben, you want to add anything to that before we move on? I think we kind of covered that one pretty good.
Yeah, I think it's great. And it's something like my final thought there is the reason that's so important in just wrapping up this step 3 is because most agents don't do that. They don't make that call. They don't do the discovery. And so they're just putting offers together off of what they think is best, not even considering what the seller's goals are. And so if it is a competitive market, or maybe you are asking for concessions or a sales price reduction, you're going to be much more likely to get the things that you want if you can give the seller the things that they want.
Mm-hmm. While we'll flip flop this one. Why don't you share a little bit on the appraisal first, and then I'll do the home inspection.
Okay. Yeah. Well, this is step 4 here, inspection and appraisal. Now, a lot of times when there's financing involved with a bank, a mortgage broker, a correspondent lender, appraisals are usually going to be required. Not all the time, but most of the time. Now, on some of the loan programs that we're talking about tonight, first-time home buyer, down payment assistance, reduced down payment, those types of loan programs, an appraisal is going to be required every time. There's also other loan products on a purchase, FHA, VA, USDA, you're going to need an appraisal. Now, what the appraisal does is it's a third-party opinion of value. It's where you're going to send someone out who is a real estate professional that has no affiliation with the bank or with the real estate agent, the buyer or the seller. It's literally a third party, and they're going to give their opinion of value. They're going to go out to the property. They're going to inspect it. They're going to go through the rooms, take measurements, take photos. They're going to look for any upgrades or possibly any defects if applicable. What they're going to do from there is they're then going to identify recent sales comparables in the last 6 to 9 months within a 1 to 2 mile radius of other similar or like-minded properties that have sold. And they're going to compare all the property characteristics against those. They're also going to review the sales contracts and any other particulars. And then at that point, they're going to give an opinion of value. And the reason that's important for you as a buyer is you want to make sure that the property you're purchasing, you want to know that it's worth what you have agreed to pay for it. And so that's what the appraiser and the appraisal does. Now, the bank is ordering the appraisal to protect their interest because a lot of times they're going to be providing or financing most of the purchase. But a benefit of that is that it's also going to protect your interest as the buyer. Now, if an appraisal comes in low, Colorado is a very pro-buyer state. There's all these different dates and deadlines in the Colorado real estate contract, things like earnest money, loan application, home inspection, and another one of those is appraisal. And so if the appraisal does come in low, you as the buyer have the ability to cancel the contract and get your earnest money back, or request that the seller reduces the sales price to the appraised value. And if they don't, then you have the ability to cancel the deal, and get all of your earnest money back. And so the way that our contract is written is very pro buyer. So you do have to deposit that earnest money typically within 48 hours of going under contract, but then all of these different dates and deadlines throughout the course of the transaction. If something doesn't check out, maybe it's inspection, appraisal, title, whatever it is, you have the ability to cancel and get your earnest money back. So that is also the case here with the appraisal.
And kind of piggybacking off what Ben just shared, the inspection is the most common of when a contract might fall out, meaning you get it under contract with certain terms and conditions, everything's great, but then maybe a week or two later when you have your inspection done on the home, that's when you identify and just come out with anything that might be wrong with the house. So I've got some really great home inspectors I always use and trust, and this is something that I never, ever, ever recommend avoiding or not doing, even with brand new construction homes. I'll share on that here in a second. But the point of a home inspection is just, as a buyer, being able to really just bulletproof understand any potential issues that might arise in the future from owning that home. But also, it's also a way to have a little bit more leverage when it comes to a little bit additional negotiation. So almost every home right now that gets under contract has some level of a concession or an agreement to adjust the price or fix certain things before the closing happens. And this is a great opportunity as a buyer just to, within reason, have some negotiation and leverage to be able to get some of these things accomplished and done before you buy the home. So there's two things that are always done that I recommend as a little bit of, it's kind of like an add-on for an inspection, but I always share this with anybody that's on that might be from out of state. We have two things that are in addition to the regular home inspection. One of these is what's called radon. So radon is this odorless gas that's typically found in a crawl space, any area below the home that might be a trapped space of air where it can't really go anywhere. And this radon can be harmful, but since it's odorless, it's hard to detect. And out here in Colorado, we have a lot of the soils that are out here can be pretty common to have this in there. So it's really common to do a radon test. They put this little device in the home for 48 hours. And if the measurement is above 4 milliliters, that basically means that it's probably worth having a radon mitigation system. So just as this example, that would be something that might be uncovered and identified during the inspection. And now we have the opportunity to say through what's called an inspection objection that we would like to have a radon mitigation system installed prior to us purchasing the home, or maybe it's going to be a dollar amount that we're willing to get instead of having that installed. If you have it maybe like a really quick closing where the closing's in 2 weeks and that's just not feasible to have that installed prior to, it could also just be a dollar amount. So that radon is a big one. And then the other one is what's known as a sewer scope. Again, since Colorado has so many of these massive trees that have kind of a mind and character of their own, as they mature and get older, a lot of times these roots can impede on the sewer line that connects your home typically out to the main metro, the main sewer line for your development that you're in. So oftentimes this can also be something that's uncovered in an inspection. And this one is very expensive. We're talking sometimes $10,000 or $15,000 or more. So this is just something that for $100, $125 to pay for that little extra part of the inspection, it's always well worth it. So, but again, this is just kind of that fun experience, a fun time during this process where after you've already, gotten the home under contract, usually you'll come out, if you're local, you'll meet me, for example, for the last maybe hour of the inspection to kind of do a recap. But it's also just a great opportunity just to kind of come back into the house and have a few hours just to spend there. And this is always an exciting time for most home buyers. So that's a little bit about this inspection and appraisal. Ben, let's move on now to the closing and final walkthrough, and I'll let you do closing day after I just share a couple things on the final walkthrough. So okay. We get to the, almost to the finish line. We can taste it. Oftentimes, once you're within about 2 to 3 days, the lender will even reach out and say that we've got what's called clear to close, meaning that there's basically no other thing that's going to come up to derail us from this happening. It's became a reality at this point. So what we always still want to do is do what we call a final walkthrough. And that basically entails whether it just be myself as a realtor, or if I have a client that maybe is out of state, I can do like a FaceTime or a Zoom with them when I'm in the house, or meet, if they're local, just meet the person at the house. And we just do this even the morning of the closing day, just to do one final quick check that the home is as expected. You'd be surprised at how often you might have a contract to buy a home, and what we have is in the contract is what's called fixtures and inclusions. And for example, there might be this beautiful chandelier above the dining room table, and we, didn't see anything in the contract or in the writing about it being a personal item. So we are assuming that's included with the purchase of the home. Well, we do that final walkthrough and go into the dining room, and oh my God, there's a hole where a light used to be, but there's no light. Maybe the seller forgot to put that in the contract and it was a family heirloom or something like that. By doing this final walkthrough, we catch stuff like that. Another big one is with vacant houses. So homes that have already been left, the home is now vacant. Sometimes they forget little things like maybe turning the sprinklers on for the spring season. And I'm saying this because this has happened. There's a little knob down in the crawl space once you turn the sprinklers on for the year. And if you don't tighten that, it starts shooting water out, and maybe somebody was in a hurry. They didn't do that part of it. And you come back a week later and there's a foot of water in the basement. So if you catch this in the final walkthrough, this can get resolved by the owner of the home at that point, which is still the seller, and they're responsible. So just a way to very, very surely protect yourself from a big mistake if something like that ever were to happen. But I think more exciting than the walkthrough is the closing day. So Ben, just share a little bit on that, since you're always typically involved in this too, if it's a home that has a loan associated with it.
Yeah, closing day is always a very exciting day. I remember the closing day of the very first home that I bought, and it's something that I will never forget. And especially for a first-time home buyer, you will not forget that day. It's very exciting. Now, when you're at the closing table, you're going to be signing documents between yourself as the buyer and the seller. There's going to be documents that transfer the ownership, the vesting deed. There's going to be the transfer of utilities. There's utility documents, property taxes. You're going to be signing documents between yourself and the title company, the real estate settlement statement. There's also going to be some other disclosures. You're going to be signing documents between yourself and the lender, if there is a loan, which most of the time there is. So usually, and there's going to be a notary that's going to be witnessing all of this, and they're going to be notarizing all of the signatures and just verifying that you are who you say you are. They're going to ask for your ID. If there's any funds due, if there's any cash to close, or if there's a down payment due, at that time, you will bring that into closing in the form of a certified funds cashier's check, or you'll have those funds wired in 24 hours prior. The closing usually takes about 45 minutes, and most of the time, questions should have been answered at this point, and you should already have reviewed your closing disclosure. And once everything is signed, and once the seller has signed their portion of the documents, then at that point, that is when the home typically would become yours, unless there's some other agreement, like Adam was referencing earlier, some type of post-occupancy agreement. But at that point, once you have deposited your funds, signed all of your documents, title will then record the new vesting deed and the transfer of ownership. At that point, that is when the home becomes yours. I always point this out as well, because this is a question that I get sometimes. Title, or the escrow officer, is also the one that is responsible for cutting up and breaking all of the checks and getting all of the different parties paid. So for example, there's going to be different parties involved. There's going to be the appraiser, the credit report, the lender, the real estate agents. There's going to be things like property taxes. In some case, there can be HOA transfer dues and transfer fees. So everything is organized on one document, and the buyer will only bring in that bottom line number. But then after closing, after they've brought that in, title will actually go in and cut all those checks to the appropriate party. So that's not the responsibility of the buyer or the real estate agent, which really, really helps.
Mm-hmm. That was awesome. Thanks, Ben. So that was the close method. Now I just want to share with you guys a few big mistakes that we hopefully are going to help you guys avoid happening to yourselves. So these are just three of the biggest things that we just see all the time and are just passionate about, and just really want to ensure that whenever we have an opportunity to share this with other people, we do, and they don't make the same mistakes. So the first one is just overlooking any hidden costs. And we didn't really talk about this tonight, but there's a lot of additional potential costs depending on the home that you find. So an example of this would be, like Ben had just said a second ago, HOA. If you guys aren't familiar, that stands for Homeowner Association. And there might be two identical homes as far as price point. They're both $500,000. Well, there's a lot of other potential costs that could make each of these significantly different when it comes when it's about just affordability and being able to, make this a reality for you. So the HOA dues could be anywhere from, $50 a month all the way up to several $100s a month. And that'll come into play here. Another big one is property taxes. A lot of people aren't familiar with Colorado. Every state's different, but in Colorado, we have very significantly different tax amounts, property tax percentages, depending on where you live. As an example, if you live in an area that's a little bit older, like maybe more mature areas like Arvada and Wheat Ridge, it might be as low as 0.4, so a little bit less than 0.5%. So if you own a $500,000 home, your property taxes could be, if it's at the low end, about 0.5%, you're looking at about $2,500 a year. That same $500,000 home, though, if you're located down I live in Littleton. There's areas in southwestern Littleton known as Sterling Ranch. Really, really cool area, but it's a newer community. So it's a newer development, and that includes just additional taxes to help pay for that new civil engineering and infrastructure that exists now at Sterling Ranch. Sterling Ranch is at 1.4%. So instead of that $500,000 house having a $2,500 annual property tax, it could be almost 3 times that. It could be close to $7,000. Pretty significant difference. So just things like that, hidden costs. I know, Ben, you have a few others that you're probably more familiar with than I am, especially since you have a bunch of rental properties. Is there anything you want to share on this one before I move on?
Yeah, I think that's the biggest thing. In my experience, you just want to really be aware of HOAs, and especially if you're buying something like a condo where the HOA is going to be higher. And also keep in mind that if there is an HOA, or if you are looking at something like a condo, you do want to be aware of that, and not just what the fee is, but to make sure that the HOA is actively managing the property in a responsible way, that the property has the correct insurance. Because a lot of times, what we're finding out is that HOAs are not running these complexes in a way that is fiscally responsible. And then that is where you get these things like special assessments, where all of a sudden, the HOA might be $400, but because it was mismanaged, now they need to charge an additional $200 or $300 a month for 2 or 3 years to cover the cost since the fund was not managed correctly. So just be aware of that. Other than that, there's things like utilities, but that's based off of kind of energy and economic factors. And I know a lot of times you may pay those if you're renting already. But that HOA, property taxes, and homeowners insurance. One quick note here in the homeowners insurance. Also keep in mind that you have the ability to shop that. You can shop the insurance around at any point. If you buy the home, for example, and you have American Family, but then 2 years later, your American Family premiums increase substantially, well, you can shop the insurance at any time, and you have the ability to cancel your prior policy. And sometimes you got to do that. Play the insurance game a little bit if those premiums go up. So that's something that I do. I'll shop around every couple of years just to make sure that my policies are in line with where the market is at.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've seen a lot of big increases right now, especially due to fire concerns. Every state's different. So if wherever you guys are right now, if you maybe aren't really familiar with, specific things like that, I know people that maybe live out on the West or East Coast, you have things like hurricane insurance, flood insurance. Colorado, a big one right now is fire insurance. And there's even to the point of some of the big insurance providers leaving the state altogether just because of how expensive it is to be an insurance provider. So the next one I hopefully hit this one home already, but just neglecting home inspections. And the part that I want to share with you again on this one that I alluded to earlier was the new construction homes, and how I have a lot of people that are buying a brand new home, a new construction, new build home. And they say, Adam, why am I going to pay, maybe $500 for a home inspection if it's a brand new house? I've seen just as many issues come up in home inspections on brand new builds as I have sometimes with older 20-year-old homes. There's still a lot of things that can be uncovered and discovered during the inspection on a new build. So even if you're buying a new construction home, it's still worth having this done. And if I haven't scared you enough yet, one last attempt that I'll always share with my clients, and this doesn't benefit me at all, but just something I really always want to look out for them for, is usually a new construction home will include a 1 year, sometimes 2, but typically a 1 year home builder warranty. And what you can do is, if you don't want to do the inspection before buying the home, have it done about month 9 or month 10 after owning the home. And by doing so, you're able to uncover any other little things that might be, needing some adjustments. It can't be things like a scratch on the wall that you did after living in the home, but if it's, larger type items, you can at least ensure that those get resolved before that 1 year warranty is up, or then it might be a lot more costly of a fix. So that's a big one. And then last but not least, and I'll let Ben really share a little bit on this one, because this is something that I know he's really passionate about. So am I. We talked about this at the very beginning tonight about emotional decision making, and how
Yeah.
some of these tricks and tools like the non-negotiables and understanding the pick 2 out of 3, having more of this stuff in your tool belt and doing this early on in the process will avoid you making emotional decisions. Ben, I know you're passionate. Share a couple things on this one with us.
Yeah, I love emotion. So this is something that you want to be emotional about. This home purchase is going to represent your home, your dreams, your family, but you just don't want those emotions to be driving your behavior and making the decisions for you. Yes, get excited, think about those things, have a vision and a plan for your family, but at the same time, you also want to make sure that you're making informed financial decisions, that you're financially aligned with your spouse, with your partner, and you're doing what you feel is best for your future, not just with the home, but financially. And I've seen so many people where they put so much investment into the emotion side of things that they don't give as much of a priority to what is the monthly payment going to look like? What is the out of pocket due? The worst possible scenario is buying a house and then having regret a couple months later that you feel like the payment's too high, or you're just financially stressed, because when you have that financial stress, it takes away your peace. And so this is how you avoid it. So the way that you avoid it and the way that you navigate around that is you take it one step at a time. You make that initial call, you get pre-approved, you identify what your purchasing power is, and then you give yourself the opportunity to really think through some of these things. Like, how much are you really comfortable paying per month? Like, what is that number? And give it some thought. It's probably not something that you're going to be able to answer within 24 hours. You give yourself a week to think about it, 2 weeks, as you're going through the pre-approval process. And then one thing that I always love to do for the buyers that I work with before they write any offers, so they've identified a house, they're interested. I always tell them, before you write the offer, call me, text me, email me, let me know, send me the address. What I will do is I'll look up the property. I'll verify with the county. I'll log on to the county website, verify exactly what the property taxes are. I'll look up the HOA dues. And before you write the offer, I will be able to give you an estimate that is very accurate. That's going to let you know what the cash to close is going to be, what your monthly payment is going to be, what the interest rate is going to look like before you write the offer. That way, there's not going to be any surprises once you go under contract. There's nothing worse than going under contract on the home of your dreams or your first home, and then finding out 2 weeks later or a week before closing that the payment's going to be $500 higher than you were anticipating. And so when you take things at an even pace, when you make informed financial decisions, when you're emotional, but you don't lead with your emotions, you can make much better decisions. So that's what I always recommend.
Ben didn't share it on this one. We did this a couple weeks ago, and you had a really funny story about just open houses and how common it is to be hosting an open house, and you have the neighbor next door that has no intention of even buying a home. When they walk in, they're just being a nosy neighbor, and after 10 minutes walking through the house, they're telling you how they want to, write an offer, and just complete emotional decision making.
It always cracks me up when I do open houses. I always like to position myself by the front door so I can greet the person coming in off the street when they walk into the house, and then I can introduce them to the real estate agent. Usually they're in the kitchen or the living room, and this has happened multiple times where I have introduced myself to someone as they come in the house. And we'll typically talk for a couple of minutes as I'm walking back to introduce them to the real estate agent. And there's been times where they, are you interested? Are you in the market? Oh, no. I just saw the sign, and I was walking my dog and wanted to come in here and look. And they go from not even thinking about buying. They're not in the market. They have no interest. And then all of a sudden they're writing an offer 2 hours later on like a $750,000 home. It's crazy. So to think that, 2 hours ago you were at Sunday brunch, home buying wasn't even on your mind, and now you're writing an offer. I mean, so that is not how you want to do it.
Yeah. So Ben just kind of went through this. This again, though, no matter what phase you guys are at right now, there's a few kind of, as you've maybe gotten the kind of the rhythm of what we've been talking about tonight. There's a few early on in the process things that are really important to do. So, as I said, I'm going to share with you guys all of Ben's info as soon as this is out tonight. I'm going to send you guys an email with a recap with some of the really good links to share with you guys in case you want to go a little bit deeper into some of these educational resources. But then also I'll give you guys Ben's contact info there and give you Ben's contact info there. I also see that Ben shared it in the chat, so feel free to click that as well. And more than anything else, you guys, we'd love to answer any questions. If you feel comfortable asking any on the chat right now, we don't think I've seen too many really that, so Ann had asked a couple questions about first-time home buyer type questions. If you guys don't feel comfortable though, asking a question, in the webinar, feel free to always just, connect with us. We can either do a strategy call, both of us together with you, or if you just would want to just do it with one of us, that's fine too.
Yeah, and the strategy calls, sometimes folks get intimidated, or they think there's some type of obligation, or there's a cost, or they're committed in some way. It's just a strategy call, and so I always say that I want to be a resource to the people that I work with. I want to be able to serve them, and I'm so appreciative when I get that opportunity. But I'm not trying to convince anyone. I'm not trying to, at the end of the day, I want people to do what is best for them. And a lot of times they don't know. They don't know what's, what should I do? And so I'm not here to make up your mind. I'm not here to tell you what to do. I'm not here to make those decisions for you. What I am here to do is to let you know what your options are, what your purchasing power is, what programs you're eligible for, what might benefit you. And once you have that information, then at that point, you'll have the ability to come to your own conclusion on what you feel is best.
Love it, man. Well, you guys, we'll stick around here for a few minutes. We'd love to get any questions answered right now if you're feeling comfortable asking them. Otherwise, again, we'll always be just one phone call, one email away to help out in any way we can. I'm going to throw it on a different screen here, Ben, just so you and I can be on the same screen here. And we'll just give it here a minute and see if anybody has anything. Again, guys, thanks so much. Miguel, I see a few people have been just, kind of having a few different comments here. Miguel, Nick, and thanks again, guys. Really appreciate you sticking around until the end and investing in yourselves. It's awesome.
Yeah, we do appreciate everyone's time. We know that taking time out of your Wednesday night is a really big commitment. So thank you for spending an hour with us.
All right, guys. Well, thank you so much. And we'll hopefully connect with you guys on another time. So we'll talk to you guys then. Thank you.